Good morning, everyone. So, in today's video, we'll be discussing about tissues topic. We'll be simultaneously doing both plant tissues and animal tissues as well. Okay. So, first of all, let's discuss what is the general idea of tissues. What exactly are tissues? Tissues are nothing but a group of cells. So, in order to talk about tissues, first we'll discuss what is a cell and then we'll talk about tissues. Do you remember what is a fundamental unit of life or a building block of an organism? Yes, it is cell. Cell is present in every living organism. And coming to the number of living cells in an organism, it differs. Say in case of unicellular organisms like amoeba, there will be only a single cell and it performs all the functions like respiration, digestion, locomotion and excretion, etc. And bigger animals generally are multicellular. They have many cells. Here, each cell will be having a specific function. Say for example, respiration is performed by one type of cells, digestion is performed by one type of cells. These group of cells which perform a specific function are known as tissues. Tissues are a group of cells which perform a particular function. So in multicellular organisms, there will be a division of labor, like which group of cells will perform what work. Say for example, muscles helps in contraction and relaxation and brings movement. Blood tissue, it will help in transportation of cells, nutrients, etc. Even plants are multicellular organisms which have tissues, but they are not similar to animal tissues. See, plants cannot move, right? And they have to transport water and food, and some of the tissues in plants are dead tissues, right? So plant tissues are not so similar to animal tissues. Although you have studied both plant and animal tissues, now we will study on comparison what of both plants and animals. Okay. On the other hand, if we talk about animals, animals move from place to place and they have living tissues. We generally don't have many dead tissues. In case of plants, again, we see dividing and non-dividing tissues. Say for example, at the tips of the plants, there will be growth, whereas other parts of the plant, there will not be growth. So growth is restricted to specific areas in plants, but in humans, it's not like that. And they also have non-dividing tissues in plants, but in humans it's not like that. We have uniform growth, we have growth in all the parts, and we have dividing tissues. So now that you understood what are exactly tissues, we'll talk about plant tissues first. Plant tissues are the tissues which are present in plants, right? So in plants also there will be certain groups of cells which will be performing similar functions. Okay, say for example, the cells of xylem will help in transportation of water. The group of cells in phloem will help in transportation of food. Okay, so certain group of cells performing a certain function is known as a tissue. The tissues in plant are called plant tissues. The tissues in animals are called animal tissues. So in case of plant tissues, we have first two main important types of tissues. What are they? They are meristematic tissues and the permanent tissues. Just before this topic, I told you that plants have dividing tissues and non-dividing tissues. If you remember, just now we discussed it. So dividing tissues are nothing but the meristematic tissues. They are present only at specific regions, and only from that region growth will be possible. So such dividing tissues are called meristematic tissues. And there are some tissues which are called permanent tissues, and you can also think that they are non-dividing. Okay, meristematic tissues పెరిగి పెద్దవయ్యి permanent tissues అవుతాయి. For this I told you one word, if you remember, that is differentiation. Meristematic tissues, upon differentiation, they become permanent tissues. ఓకే, ఫస్ట్ ఫామ్ అయినప్పుడు మెరిస్టమాటిక్ టిష్యూస్ అన్నీ ఒకలానే ఉంటాయి. లేటర్ వన్స్ దే ఆర్ ఫార్మ్డ్ they will get one shape and one function. See, for example, some cells became like this, some cells became like this, and some cells got the shape like this. Now this is xylem vessels, they will perform transportation of water function. These are parenchyma which are performing photosynthesis and storing food. These are sclerenchyma which are providing support to the plant. So like this, meristematic tissues after formation, they will get one shape and they will get one function, and they will become permanent non-dividing tissues, right? So therefore in plants, what we have, children, in plants we have two types of tissues. One are dividing tissues, the other type are permanent tissues. Meristematic tissues only upon differentiation, upon getting a shape and structure and function, they will become permanent tissues. Now in the following video we will see how a meristematic tissue will be and what it will do, and then we'll also see what is a permanent tissue and what are its functions, right? So for these dividing and non-dividing tissues, there are other technical terms. Dividing tissues are called meristematic tissues, whereas non-dividing are called permanent. First, let's talk about the dividing tissues, which are meristematic tissues. The word meristematic is derived from a Greek word meristos, which means dividing, right? So the name itself is telling you the function of these cells. Their main important function is to divide and grow. Okay, so they in turn are responsible for the growth of the plant. We discussed that the growth is restricted in plants. It is subjected only to certain parts. Not every part will grow. Okay, so these dividing tissues are present in these growing parts only. Okay, so the parts where growth is exhibited, it is because of these meristematic tissues. Meristematic tissues are present in different parts. So based on the type, based on the part where the meristematic tissues are present, there are three different types of meristematic tissues. If they are present at the tips, they are called apical meristems. If they are present on the sides, they are called lateral meristems. If they are present in between the internodes and the nodes, it is called intercalary meristems. In our textbook, only apical and lateral are mentioned. Apical meristems are present at the root tip and shoot tip. Shoot means stem. They increase the length of the stem. When we talk about lateral meristems, lateral means sides. It is located in the sideways, means in the diameter of the stem, right? It increases the diameter, which is girth. Okay, it increases the diameter of the stem, and that's why stems will slowly become woody and wide, right? Next we'll talk about intercalary meristem. Although it is not mentioned in the textbook, I told you when grazing herbivores eat away the plants, that's why at the base of the leaves we have these intercalary meristems, so that again they can repair the lost parts. They also help growing small tiny twigs into big branches, right? So depending on the place where these meristematic tissues group of dividing cells are present, we have three different types: apical, lateral and intercalary. During the starting stages, all the meristematic cells are similar in size, function and appearance. Okay, but upon maturity they will undergo differentiation. They will get a proper structure and function, which is called division of labor. Then they become permanent. Now that you understood where meristematic tissues are present, let's also discuss about their characteristics, like how they look like. Meristematic tissues, as their main duty is to divide, they generally should have a well developed nucleus, and it has no other function. So therefore other cell organelles may or may not be present because they may not be much use of it. So These meristematic cells are generally small, they are thin walled, they have full cytoplasm and a large nucleus. Okay, so apart from that, they have an important function that they divide rapidly and continuously, and because of their continuous division only plant growth happens. We say, for example, if they are present in apical meristems, if at all there are apical meristems, plant grows in length, height of the plant increases. If they are intercalary meristems, width, the lateral meristems, width of the plants increases. So like that, the characteristics, when we talk about characteristics, cells are small, they are thin walled, and they are full of cytoplasm, and they also have a large nucleus, because in nucleus itself the major cell division process happens. Okay, next, as we already discussed these characters, cell wall also must be thin for easy division. Okay, plants we discussed that apart from cell membrane, it will also have a cell wall, right? So in case of meristematic cells, they are dividing cells kabatti easy ga divide avvadaniki cell wall anedi it should be thin. Okay, and the vacuoles are absent. Why? Because there is no food storage and other such processes. The main process is division. Therefore nucleus is well developed and prominent ante it is easily visible anamata, anta peddaga untundi. And cells, they actively divide to form new cells. So that is regarding apical meristems, lateral meristems. Lateral meristems are also called as what? They are also called as cambium. They are present between xylem and phloem. Okay. Next, they are present between they are present in the lateral sides, and they are responsible for the diameter of the stem. Now let's discuss about permanent tissues. Before going to permanent tissues, let me remind you, apical and lateral meristems, they are present both in the root and stem also. Root tip and shoot tip you will have apical meristems. And also in the diameter of the root, diameter of the stem, and the diameter of the roots also increase with the help of lateral meristems. Okay, so all over the plant ఈ టిప్స్ అండ్ సైడ్స్లో మనకి మెరిస్టమాటిక్ టిష్యూస్ అనేవి కనిపిస్తాయి. ఓకే, నా విల్ డిస్కస్ అబౌట్ పర్మనెంట్ టిష్యూస్ ఆల్సో. సో పర్మనెంట్ టిష్యూస్ ఆర్ నాన్ డివైడింగ్ టిష్యూస్ and they are formed by the division of meristematic tissues. Meristematic tissues divide అయిపోయిన తర్వాత they get a change in structure and they get a specific function to perform. అప్పుడు ఆ మెరిస్టమాటిక్ టిష్యూస్ అప్పటి వరకు సిమిలర్గా ఉన్నవి ఏమవుతాయంటే అపాన్ మెచ్యూరిటీ ది గెట్ డిఫరెన్షియేటెడ్, ది గెట్ అ స్ట్రక్చర్, ది గెట్ అ ఫంక్షన్. ఓకే, సో వాటి డ్యూటీ వాటికి వచ్చేసినాయి కాబట్టి ఫ్రమ్ దేర్ ఆన్వర్డ్స్ దీస్ సెల్స్ విల్ నాట్ డివైడ్ ఫర్దర్. ఓకే, సో ఎప్పటికీ ఆ స్ట్రక్చర్ అండ్ ఫంక్షన్ అలానే ఉంటుంది కాబట్టి ఆల్ త్రూ అవుట్ ద ప్లాంట్ లైఫ్ వీ కాల్ దెమ్ permanent tissues. Understood? So in permanent tissues, the growth is either stopped completely, or in some cases they have to grow again. So we will say the growth is either stopped completely or for the time being. Okay, so there are generally different ways of different types of permanent tissues. Okay, based on what there are different types of permanent tissues, based on see based on the type of cells. We have discussed that tissues are of similar types of cells, similar functions ఉంటాయని చెప్పుకున్నాం. కానీ టిష్యూస్లో కూడా కాంప్లెక్స్ టిష్యూస్ విల్ బి దేర్. Simple tissues involve cells which are of same shape and size. But in case of complex tissues, the cells' shapes may differ from each other. Okay, the cells' shape may differ from each other, but still all of them together perform a common function. ఓకే, సింపుల్లో ఏంటంటే అన్నిటికీ సేమ్ స్ట్రక్చర్ ఉంటుంది, సేమ్ ఫంక్షన్ ఉంటుంది, సేమ్ సైజ్ ఉంటుంది, యూనిఫార్మిటీ ఇస్ సీన్. Whereas in case of complex tissues, what happens, cells అనేవి different shapes తో ఉంటాయి. See for example, we know about xylem and phloem. Xylem లో మనం ఏం చెప్పుకున్నాం, we discussed about xylem vessels, xylem parenchyma, xylem fibers. ఇవన్నీ ఏంటంటే the cells are different in shape from each other, right? And their functions are also different. But apart from all of these, there is one common function among all the xylem cells. What are they? That they transport water. Okay, so complex ante more developed cells with more specialities together will form a tissue. They perform a common function and they form a tissue, that is complex permanent tissue. Whereas in case of simple, the cells are structurally similar, functionally similar. Okay, whereas in case of complex, it's not the case. In case of complex, what will happen? Yes, just a second. So in complex, what will happen, it is this tissue is made up of two or more types of cells that are specialized to perform a common function. Okay, different types of cells performing a common function is called complex tissue, right? Now in the following video, let's watch about the permanent tissues and its types.
Such tissues are known as permanent tissues, which are further divided into simple and complex permanent tissues. It is simple because it is made up of similar types of cells, whereas in complex we see different types of cells. Coming to the simple permanent tissue. Simple permanent tissue consists of parenchyma, collenchyma and sclerenchyma. Talking about parenchyma, parenchyma is the most abundant type of tissue and it is found in all the parts of a plant. Generally, if we see the TS, you can see the intercellular spaces. Parenchyma with chloroplast is called chlorenchyma. In plants like lotus, you also see erenchyma, which is the parenchyma filled with 8 spaces. It helps in floating. Parenchyma is a filler tissue and is seen in all parts of the plant. Cells are generally oval to cylindrical in shape. In aquatic plants, in the form of parenchyma, it forms buoyancy. Coming to the other part, which is collenchyma. Collenchyma is generally found below the epidermis. It gives flexibility to the plants and the structural support. During heavy breezes, a plant bends but it will not break because of the flexibility given by collenchyma. And also, apart from below the stem, you'll also see collenchyma in the petioles of the leaves. Sclerenchyma consists of dead cells which are having thick depositions due to the deposition of lignin, whereas the depositions in collenchyma made up of cellulose and pectin. Sclerenchyma generally consists of sclerenchyma fibers as well as sclerenchyma sclerites. Fibers you see in the husk of coconut and jute fibers, whereas in the seeds you see the sclerites. So this is what about simple permanent tissue. Special protective tissues are seen in the stem, root as well as the leaf of the plant, which protect them from injury and excess loss of water. They also help from protecting the plant from external microbes. When we talk about the plants, see for example, whenever we are taking the roots, in case of roots and in case of the woody stems of the plants, we see some protective tissues. In leaf, we see stomata, which are the minute pores through which gaseous exchange takes place. Generally, in case of leaves, you see stomata which are guarded by guard cells. Now in the woody stems, we also see the outer layer which is bark and the inner red colored layer which is cork. These both are made up of dead cells and they do not have intercellular spaces. Because of the deposition of suberin, they are very hard and therefore they provide support to the woody stem. So this is about the simple tissue.
I hope now everyone understood about simple permanent tissues. We'll have a quick review about it. Simple permanent tissues are composed of cells which are equal in structure and function. Okay, they look similar in structure and function. and they also support the plant and they also offer protection to the plant. We saw special protective tissues also, right? So first we'll talk about protective tissues. Example is epidermis and cork. Epidermis is generally seen in young green stems. Outer layer of young green stems is made up of a protective layer called epidermis. Okay, you see this even in the leaves. Cells are like this, which are closely packed with each other. Okay, these are the epidermal cells. And outer walls, sometimes they'll have a thick layer called cutin, or which is also called as cuticle. Okay, it is a waxy layer, and generally, as it is a waxy layer, water will not go out through it, so it prevents water loss from the plants. Okay, next we also have cork, which is a protective tissue. It is present at the periphery, in the sense surface of the root. Say for example, this is the root. This periphery is in at this part, the red colored part you saw in the video just now is the cork. Cork is in turn covered by bark like this, which is a woody layer. Bark will be generally peeling off every time. Later we also discussed, see, the bark and cork cells are dead cells. Okay. Next, in epidermis, we also saw stomata, which are controlled by guard cells. They stomata, they are generally involved in gaseous exchange. Now, in bigger trees, outer trunk, if you see, you will call that outer trunk as periderm. Okay, so simply this bark and cork together, we call it as periderm, right? అదే యంగ్ స్టెమ్స్లో చూసినప్పుడైతే you will have epidermis, and later on they will become woody. So outer layer will be bark, inner layer will be cork together, which is called as periderm. Right, children? So that is regarding protective tissues. Regarding the supportive tissues, we discussed a lot about it. Supportive tissues lo entante, they generally form the bulk in the sense a whole plant is filled with the supporting tissues anmata. Okay, and there are generally three types. First one is the parenchyma. Parenchyma are living cell ki మధ్యలో intercellular spaces ఉంటాయి. Cell wall అనేది ఎలా ఉంటుంది, the cell wall will be thin walled and they'll have intercellular spaces. Generally they are oval or spherical or cylindrical in shape. Okay, and they are filler tissues kabatti almost every part of the plant you will find parenchyma. Most of the plant is filled with parenchyma. Okay, దాని వల్లే ప్లాంట్స్ కి ఒక షేప్ అనేది వస్తుందని కూడా చెప్పుకోవచ్చు. దట్స్ వై వీ కాల్ ఇట్ యాజ్ అ ఫిల్లర్ టిష్యూ. ఎగ్జాంపుల్, every plant, every part you can write root, stems, leaves, etc. If plants parenchyma is having chloroplast and is performing photosynthesis, you call it chlorenchyma. If it is having air spaces and helping the plant to float in water, you call it parenchyma, like that. Okay, next the parenchyma tissues also have nice vacuoles to store food. Now here I gave you, see, they gave you the pictures both in longitudinal section and transverse section. Transverse section means a horizontal cut. Say for example, there is a pipe like this. Now you made a cut like this and you saw this piece. How it will look? It will look like this. This is a transverse section. Okay. అదే ఇదే పైప్ని మీరు from the top you made a cut like this. Okay, then how you will see this? You will see the cell open like this. Avuna? So this is called longitudinal section. Like this you can see when you cut it from the middle, from the top నుంచి పైనుంచి ఇలా కట్ చేస్తే హాఫ్కి మీకు లాంగిట్యూడినల్ సెక్షన్ ఇలా కనిపిస్తుంది. సో లాంగిట్యూడినల్ పిక్చర్ ఆఫ్ parenchyma is given. Nucleus is visible. Vacuoles are seen in the transverse section picture. Right? Next. So coming to the next part, which is collenchyma. In collenchyma, parenchyma tissues తర్వాత డిఫరెన్షియేషన్ అయిన తర్వాత ఏమవుతాయంటే లిటిల్ డిపాజిషన్, సెల్యులోజ్ అండ్ పెక్టిన్ డిపాజిషన్ అనేది జరుగుతుంది. జరగడం వల్ల అవి ఇంకా ఓల్డ్ అయ్యి దిల్ బికమ్ collenchyma అపాన్ ద గ్రోత్ ఆఫ్ ద ప్లాంట్. ఓకే, జనరలీ ఏంటంటే దే విల్ బీ, మ్యామ్ ఆల్ collenchyma ఆర్ వన్స్ అపాన్ ఎ టైమ్ parenchyma అంటే అయి ఉండొచ్చు. ఓకే, The cells of collenchyma tissues, they'll have a circular oval polygonal shapes, and coming compared to parenchyma, they are little thicker. Why they are thicker? Because of the cellulose and pectin deposition at the corners. ఓకే, అన్ఈవెన్గా ఉంటాయి, ఈవెన్ థిక్నింగ్ అనేది ఉండదు. ఓకే, అక్కడక్కడక్కడ థికనింగ్స్ అనేవి చూస్తాం ఇన్ ద ప్రైమరీ సెల్. That's why we call it as collenchyma. It is thickened with cellulose and pectin, especially at the corners. Intercellular spaces అనేవి జనరల్గా absent అన్నమాట, because cell wall is thick కాబట్టి cells are too much near to each other. నెక్స్ట్ ఎక్కడెక్కడ ఉంటుందంటే, సే ఫర్ ఎగ్జాంపుల్ ఇఫ్ దిస్ ఇస్ అ యంగ్ స్టెమ్, బిలో ద యంగ్ స్టెమ్ యూ విల్ హ్యావ్ ద కొలెన్కైమా. కొలెన్కైమా ఫ్లెక్సిబిలిటీ ఇస్తుంది, బెండింగ్, బట్ ఇట్ విల్ నాట్ బ్రేక్, ఐ టోల్డ్. ఓకే, ఇట్ గివ్స్ ఫ్లెక్సిబిలిటీ, స్ట్రెచింగ్ కెపాసిటీ టు లీఫ్. జనరల్గా పిటియోల్ ఆఫ్ ద లీఫ్లో కూడా మనం కొలెన్కైమాని చూస్తాం. దట్స్ వై లీఫ్ విల్ ఫ్లటర్ ఇన్ ద విండ్, బట్ ఇట్ విల్ నాట్ బ్రేక్ అండ్ ఫాల్ డౌన్. ఓకే, so that is because of collenchyma. So in collenchyma you need to remember the cell wall thickenings and intercellular spaces being absent and providing structural support. Okay, next coming to sclerenchyma, cells are generally long with tapered ends. So I have already shown you sclerenchyma cells. Okay, in sclerenchyma generally there are two different types. Scleroids ఉంటాయి, sclerenchyma fibers ఉంటాయి. ఫైబర్స్ అనేవి ఏంటంటే జ్యూట్, అంటే సే ఫర్ ఎగ్జాంపుల్ జ్యూట్, కాటన్ హస్క్ ఈస్ దేర్, కొబ్బరి పీచు వీల్స్, that one, hemp, these all are examples of fibers. ఓకే, ఫైబర్స్ అనేవి లాంగ్ టఫ్ థ్రెడ్స్ లాగా ఉంటాయి అన్నమాట. సో బికాస్ ఆఫ్ ద వేర్ ఎవర్ స్క్లెరెన్కైమా ఇస్ ప్రెజెంట్, దేర్ యూ విల్ ఫైండ్ అ హార్డ్ రఫ్ గ్రిట్టి స్ట్రక్చర్ అనమాట. ఓకే, నెక్స్ట్ అదే స్క్లీరైడ్స్ అనేవి ఏంటంటే దే ఆర్ లిటిల్ స్టార్ షేప్డ్ ఫార్మ్స్ అనమాట. దే ప్రెజెంట్ ఇన్ ఆల్ ద షెల్స్ ఆఫ్ నట్స్, వాల్నట్స్ కానీ పిస్తాస్ కానీ, వీటన్నిటిలో కూడా మనం స్క్లీరైడ్స్ చూడొచ్చు. అండ్ ఆల్సో పియర్స్ అండ్ యాపిల్, ఇఫ్ యూ సీ ద అవుటర్ పీల్ విల్ బి లిటిల్ స్ట్రాంగ్. ఓకే, గ్రిట్టినెస్ అంటే కొంచెం రఫ్నెస్ అనేది ఉంటుంది అవుటర్ పీల్కి, దట్ ఈస్ బికాస్ ఆఫ్ స్క్లీరైడ్స్. Okay, collenchyma cells later on, due to the deposition of the lignin in the cell walls, they'll become thick and dead anmata. So they are called sclerenchyma cells. Okay, ma'am, if collenchyma is converting to sclerenchyma, then there will be no collenchyma అని అడగచ్చు. But see, meristematic tissues continuously divide and they keep on adding more and more parenchyma, collenchyma to the plant body. Okay, so there is no way of depletion anamata. Next, cells are generally having tapered ends in the sense sclerenchyma fibers will be like this. Okay, at middle they are wide and at the top they are narrow anamata. This is called tapering ends anamata. And see, parenchyma and collenchyma are living cells, whereas sclerenchyma is a dead cell. It will not contain any protoplasm. Okay, this type of tissues, where you will find them, you will find them in the, if this is the leaf, these are the veins of the leaf. Okay, so in the veins of the leaf you will find them, in the midrib you will find them. Okay, and even in the stem part also you will find the sclerenchyma. రైట్, ఎక్కడైతే స్ట్రాంగ్నెస్ అనేది ఉంటుందో, లైక్ నట్స్ ఆఫ్ ద షెల్స్, అవుట్ పీల్స్ ఆఫ్ ద ఫ్రూట్స్, ఫైబర్స్ ఆఫ్ ద స్టెమ్, వీటన్నిటిలోని మనం స్క్లెరెన్కైమాని చూస్తాం. రైట్ చిల్డ్రన్, సో till here, please go through the textbook, and if you have any doubt in any part, please mention in the comment section. Right, in the next video we'll do the complex permanent tissues. Right, thank you.